In the last couple of years, there's been an invasion of Pokemon clone apps, hoping to cash in on the nostalgia of the original franchise. And while this is a great argument for copyright, I can't really blame these game makers for doing it. For the longest time, Pokemon was the biggest thing. A game series, an anime, movies, trading cards, toys, clothing, a theme park, magazines, board games, SpaghettiOs. But this mega franchise didn't happen overnight. The game development fairy didn't fly into the creator's house and sprinkle some magic on him. There's actually a lot of history that led to Pokemon and its army of clones, but to see that we'd have to go back in time. Back in 1983 Japan, a 17-year-old Satoshi Tajiri made a fan magazine called Game Freak. Game Freak was focused on video games and the general arcade scene, kinda like an early version of Nintendo Power. Despite the magazine being handwritten and stapled together, it grabbed the attention of many gamers in the area, namely Ken Sugimori. Sugimori, an aspiring illustrator and manga artist, contacted Satoshi, and soon he became the illustrator for Game Freak. The duo would continue to write the magazine for a few more years until they realized that instead of writing about games, they could make games. Satoshi felt that the game industry could be better than it was. He had been driven to learn programming, so in his spare time, he had disassembled his Nintendo Famicom in order to see how it worked. Eventually, the two purchased a development kit for the Famicom and began programming. But a game can't be easily developed by two people, so Satoshi brought on others to help with the development, namely young music composer Junichi Masuda. Now with a full team, Game Freak Inc., the game developer, was founded on April 26, 1989, and on June 27th of the same year, their first game was released. The game was called Quinty, also known as Mendel Palace North America. Quinty was based around flipping tiles in order to destroy all the dolls on the level. Overall, it was a fun and simple game, and it got them in contact with Nintendo, who had just released the Game Boy that same year. Satoshi was very interested in developing for the Game Boy, especially because of the system's ability to communicate between other Game Boys. He came up with the idea of an RPG based around collecting and trading monsters, which was inspired by his childhood hobby of bug collecting. Satoshi also thought of using capsules to house these monsters, similar to Gashapon capsule toys. You know, the toy dispensers you'd hassle your parents for money for. This is how he came up with the title Capsule Monsters. Now, while Satoshi was confident in the game's concept, Nintendo wasn't so sure. Due to previous works with the company, Nintendo was willing to listen to Satoshi's pitches, although his pitches proved to be not very effective. Supposedly, Nintendo didn't really understand the concept. That is until Mario and Zelda creator Shigeru Miyamoto took personal interest and became sort of a mentor to Satoshi. Miyamoto repitched the game and Nintendo agreed to fund it. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the first struggle that Game Freak would have. First, Satoshi had trouble trademarking the name Capsule Monsters, so he changed the name to Capumon, then Pocket Monster, which would of course become Pokémon. Development for Pokemon started around the end of 1990, with Satoshi directing, Sugimori being the art director / character designer, and Masuda composing the music and sound of the game. Though, while the game was originally scheduled for December 1991, a quick search shows that didn't happen. Development had many struggles due to it being a large game. It actually took Game Freak so long that the developer almost went bankrupt multiple times. In order to keep the lights on, the company had to take on other projects like Yoshi for the NES and Mario & Wario for the Super NES. Satoshi ended up working many unpaid hours in order to see Pokemon finish. After almost 6 years of development, Pokemon Red and Green were finally released in Japan on February 27, 1996. The decision to have two versions was inspired by Miyamoto. Miyamoto liked the idea of trading Pokemon and thought two versions with Pokemon unique to each version would incentivize players to trade with each other. But while most people are familiar with the franchise about being a Pokemon master as a huge success, it initially met average sales upon release. This is mostly due to the fact that the Game Boy was nearing the edge of its life cycle and had waning interest. Surprisingly, something that drove up initial sales was the inclusion of the 151st Pokemon, Mew. Mew was actually originally not planned to be in Pokemon Red and Green. The little pink Pokemon was among other Pocket Monsters that were cut from the game. Prior to finishing the final build of the game, however, designer Shingeki Morimoto put Mew into the game's code since it was his favorite Pokemon and he thought it would be a fun secret only developers could access. The initial release of Pokemon was very glitchy, however, and players still found Mew. which led to schoolyard rumors on how to get the Pokemon, which in turn led to greater interest in the game. Satoshi used this as a way to advertise, using the popular Goro magazine. The magazine held a contest where 20 entrants would win a Mew for their game cartridge. The contest surprisingly gained approximately 70,000 entries and greatly boosted the sales of the game. Pokemon's popularity eventually led to a manga series, a trading card game, and, most well known, an anime. When making the anime, the creators wanted to give the main character a companion Pokemon that could act as a mascot. The first choice was Clefairy, since that was the main Pokemon in the first manga series. However, it was thought that the pink fairy was too girly and might alienate the male demographic. So they decided on Pikachu. The electric mouse was still cute enough to act as the mascot, but wasn't thought of as too girly since it could shoot lightning. Pikachu is also visually distinctive as a mascot, being bright yellow with red cheeks. And so, the story of Ash Ketchum and his Pikachu first aired on April 1st, 1997. The anime followed Ash on his quest to become a Pokemon master and his many failings along the way. But it proved to be popular, which only increased the franchise's profitability. This popularity meant that Nintendo decided to bring Pokemon stateside. While Pokemon had a slow start in Japan, it definitely did not have that in North America. This is due to something that I can only call a marketing blitzkrieg. If you'd watched TV in 1998, you couldn't really get away from ads for Pokemon.
These days, everyone's trying to catch Nintendo's Pokemon.
There was even magazine and comic ads. Nintendo Power dedicated an entire issue towards Pokemon. But the icing on the cake is actually the promotional VHS. Nintendo released a VHS in the summer of 1998 in order to build up hype for the release of Pokemon. The sneak peek included clips of the English dub anime and an explanation on the basic concept of Pokemon, in its 90s sort of way.
Each one is totally different from the other. And, are you ready for this? There are 150 of them, and you gotta catch them all.
And considering what Pokemon became, it kind of puts clips like this into perspective.
And you better steal Pikachu away from them soon, because the TV show's about to launch, and the Game Boy game, and the toys, the card game, comic books. Soon the whole world will be looking for Pikachu.
But the advertisement worked. Pokemon Red and Blue, as well as the anime, were released in North America in September 1998, and was almost an instant success. Kids were encouraged to catch them all, and speaking as one of those kids, we were happy to oblige. The anime included a Poke Rap, so no kid who ever watched would forget any of these Pokemon.
Electro, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, Venusaur, Rattata, Fearow, Pidgey, King, Jolteon, Dragonite, Ghastly, Ponyta, Vaporeon, Poliwrath, Butterfree! Catch 'em, gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon!
I'm pretty sure I have the first generation of Pokemon forever ingrained in my subconscious due to this song. This Pokemania was only furthered when the trading cards and other merchandise were released. And something that was thought to be a fad ended up lasting quite a long time and having a lasting effect. Pokemon ended up having more and more games, crossing over consoles and game genres. The amount of Pokemon to catch grew from 151 to 721. The series has gone through its share of parody and controversy. The anime is still going after 19 seasons and multiple movies. And Pikachu's gone through some really awesome weight loss programs. Something that Nintendo originally rejected ended up defining a generation of gamers, and continues to be one of the most beloved and profitable franchises around. And it all started from a small team with an idea, and one person backing them up. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed.